Hi, I'm Lorene. I collapsed in my own kitchen, blood sugar crashing, body limp, and my brother stepped right over me. "Don't die on my hoodie," he said. "That's all. No panic, no help." They canceled my insulin to buy concert tickets. They turned my bedroom into a live stream studio. They told people I was dramatic, selfish, unnecessary. But the worst part? It wasn't just neglect. It was coordinated, quiet, calculated. They rewrote my place in the family like I was never there at all. So why did Grandpa call right after I nearly died? And what did he know that they tried so hard to bury? In this house, silence doesn't mean peace. It means endurance. The kind of quiet that hums in your ears when the heat's been off too long and the refrigerator makes more conversation than your family does. I had just finished a double shift at the urgent care clinic, the soles of my sneakers worn thin and my legs stiff from standing for 10 hours. The sky had already turned steel gray by the time I pulled into the driveway. My breath fogged up the cold glass door as I pushed it open, the smell of reheated meatloaf and pine sol greeting me like a half-hearted apology. I stepped into the kitchen and dropped my keys into the chipped ceramic bowl by the sink. No one looked up from the living room. Dinner was my turn. Again. I didn't argue anymore. I just moved like clockwork. Pantry, fridge, stove. My body knew the motions, even if my brain screamed to rest. I hadn't eaten since morning. I'd run out of glucose tabs 2 days ago. While chopping onions, my fingers felt clumsier than usual. I blinked once, then again, but the knife felt heavier, the edges blurrier. My knees buckled as the room lurched sideways. "Not again," I whispered, gripping the counter. My hands trembled, legs twitching as the floor rose to meet me. The cold tile greeted my cheek with a thud. I heard the sizzle of the pan behind me, the faint buzz of the microwave. No footsteps. The seconds stretched. My pulse thudded in my ears, too fast and too loud, like a drum roll to a punchline no one asked for. I barely registered the creak of the door opening. Someone had come in. Damn it, Lorene. A sneaker stepped over me, literally, over my hip. I caught a whiff of cologne and sweat. Trent. "Don't die on my hoodie," he muttered, yanking his gym bag up higher on his shoulder. I heard the fridge open, something pop, a gulp of water. Then the door slammed again. I tried to speak. My mouth moved, but the words didn't come out. The weight of his indifference hit harder than the fall. I lay there, unmoving, staring at the grain of the cabinet. "Don't die on my hoodie," looped in my head over and over until it didn't sound real anymore. I remembered the Halloween when I was 8. He stole all my Snickers and told Mom I ate them. She believed him, said I had to learn to share. I remember wondering what sharing meant if it only went one way. Upstairs, I could hear the laugh track from some sitcom Vera was watching. Her cackling blended in. She wasn't coming. She never did. I shifted, or tried to. My limbs were lead. My mouth tasted like pennies. If I die here, I thought, would they even pause the show? A dull buzzing broke through the haze. My phone. Somewhere near the trash can. With every ounce of willpower, I turned my head. I saw it. My phone face down, buzzing again. I dragged my hand inch by inch, nails scraping the floor toward the light. "Still alive?" The screen read. "Had a weird dream about you." It was Claire. I blinked hard, focused on my fingers, and managed 3 words. "Not okay." That was enough. The message sent. The phone dimmed. 10 minutes later, sirens. I heard the tires crunching the driveway gravel, the doorbell frantically ringing. Still, the TV upstairs blared. Then pounding on the door. A voice yelled from outside. Deep, urgent, male. "We need entry now." I smiled, barely. Not because I was safe yet, but because I knew something they didn't. They'd locked the door. The next time I opened my eyes, the ceiling was white. Too white. I heard muffled chatter outside the door, someone pushing a squeaky cart down the hall. My tongue was dry, my throat raw. I turned my head slowly, IV in my arm, beeping machines, antiseptic in the air. I wasn't home. There were no familiar kitchen sounds, No sitcom laugh tracks upstairs, no clinking of plates or TV dinner trays. Just stillness and a quiet too sterile to be comforting. A nurse passed by, peeked in, offered a small smile. She didn't say anything about family. It was Claire who kept calling. One of the younger nurses told me that, said it gently, like it might hurt to know. Your friend Claire, she's been checking in every hour since last night. She dropped off your charger and some socks, real fuzzy ones. I nodded. Couldn't speak yet. My lips were chapped, and my mouth couldn't form the words I wanted. What I wanted was to ask if my mother had called. Or my brother. Or anyone whose blood ran in the same veins as mine. But I already knew the answer. They didn't forget. They just didn't come. The nurse looked like she wanted to say something else, then gave me that polite, distant look people reserve for abandoned things they aren't supposed to question. She adjusted my IV and walked out, her silence confirming everything. Lying there, I stared at the ceiling panels until a memory rolled in without warning. 13 years old, sitting cross-legged on the floor, tearing open a shiny birthday bag. I thought it was a dress I'd pointed out at the mall a month earlier, but inside were 2 faded sweaters, both slightly too big and unmistakably used. I looked up, confused. Vera barely glanced at me from the couch. Don't be picky, she said. It's still good. Your cousin only wore them a couple times. That same week, Trent got a new gaming console. No secondhand packaging. No one told him to be grateful. I folded the sweaters back into the bag without a word. I'd learned by then that making a fuss didn't change the outcome. It just made dinner colder. Years later, during high school finals, I was running a fever, shaking through practice tests. I asked if I could skip church one Sunday to rest and study. Vera didn't look up from her coffee. I'm already on meds because of your whining, she snapped. You can't just fall apart every time things get hard. That week, Trent skipped school entirely and was praised for managing his stress like an adult. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't been my life. In this bed, hooked up to machines because no one thought it worth checking on me, I realized something I'd ignored for too long. It wasn't that they forgot me, it's that they rewrote me. I didn't exist in their version of this family unless I was a problem, or invisible, emotional erasure. That's what it was. Maya Angelou once said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I had dozens of first times. I just kept trying to believe something better. My phone buzzed again. Still no visitors? Claire's voice came through in a soft recording. I'm in the parking lot. They won't let me in just yet, but I brought your charger. And your fuzzy socks. I knew you'd forget. My eyes watered, not from sadness, but from the sheer contrast. She remembered the socks, something Vera had rolled her eyes at every winter. Buy thicker shoes was her solution. Dr. Dorian came in about 10 minutes later. Calm presence. Measured voice. You were lucky your friend acted quickly, he said. Your glucose was through the roof. Your organs were already reacting. Another hour, and we'd be having a very different conversation. He paused, looking over his clipboard, then directly at me. Did something happen at home? I thought about the hoodie comment. The silence. The food bowls for the dog placed neatly next to an empty fridge shelf. I looked at him. Something always happens at home. Before he could ask more, a nurse stepped in with a clipboard and a half smile. Lorene, you have a phone call. Name's Marvin. I sat straighter in the bed than I had all morning. Grandpa, I held the hospital phone receiver close, trying not to let my hand tremble. His voice came through calm, deep, a little slower than I remembered, but unmistakably his. You don't sound surprised I called. I took a moment. I didn't think you had my number. Marvin chuckled softly, the same way he used to when I'd say something too clever for my age. You forget. I never forget my own. There was silence on my end. A lot of things had been forgotten. Just not by him. He asked gently if Vera had come by. I said yes before I could stop myself. The lie felt sour in my throat. Marvin didn't comment. He let it hang in the air before adding, that night, someone accessed the home's old security system. I still get pinged when anyone touches it. I didn't know how to answer. I stared at the whiteboard across the room where a nurse had scribbled, "Today is Wednesday," in blue marker. It felt wrong, like time had continued without me. "I watched the footage," Marvin said, voice even. "They walked past you like you were an inconvenience. I knew, Lorene. Before the paramedics ever got in, I knew." I shut my eyes. Somehow hearing it from him hurt more than living it. We stayed on the line for a while, neither of us speaking, just breathing. Until finally he said, "You still have that yellow envelope I gave you years back?" I blinked. "The one with the USB?" "Exactly." That one word dropped me straight into a memory I'd buried beneath a pile of smaller betrayals. I'd just turned 21. Worked 2 part-time jobs, one at a diner, one restocking shelves at a pharmacy, to buy Vera a birthday cake from her favorite bakery downtown. I even picked out a deep burgundy scarf, soft and expensive, the kind she used to stare at through boutique windows, but always said was too frivolous. The morning after, I woke up early to make sure the gift was on the kitchen table. Vera didn't mention it. By lunchtime, Trent had posted a photo, Vera smiling, holding the cake, the scarf draped around her shoulders. The caption read, "Thanks to my son for making Mom feel special." She liked the post, then shared it. No correction, no acknowledgement, just silence. I didn't ask. I'd learned better by then. The fastest way to kill a moment was to remind them you existed in it. Years later, when Grandma Ruth died, I stayed up for 3 nights writing her eulogy. I collected old photos, scanned every note she ever wrote me. I even designed the funeral program, front and back, so it wouldn't look like the ones printed at gas stations. I submitted everything to Vera. The printed version at the service didn't have my name on it, no eulogy. Trent gave a 5-minute speech about how Ruth made awesome cornbread and never missed church. When I asked why my part had been cut, Vera said, "It's easier this way, clean, focused." She meant quiet. She always meant quiet. Lying in that hospital bed, phone still pressed to my ear, it hit me like ice water. I hadn't just been overlooked. I'd been edited out, deliberately, like a typo in someone else's draft of a perfect life. Neglect is one thing, but revision, that's cruelty. Marvin cleared his throat. "I asked your mom to include your name in Ruth's will," he said quietly. I'd spoken to her directly, told her Ruth wanted it that way. I didn't interrupt. But when I got my copy, that section was missing. My pulse thudded. "I didn't fight it then," he continued. "Didn't want to start a war. Maybe I should have. Maybe he should have. But I didn't say that. I just whispered, 'Do you still have the original draft?' He hesitated only a moment. 'I do, on that USB. It's encrypted. But the password's your middle name, Ruth.'" I laughed, a short, bitter exhale. "You think I've forgotten where I put it?" He sounded amused. "Knowing you, no." "I taped it to the back of my dresser," I said slowly. Behind the bottom drawer." There was a pause. "They moved my room." And then, as if someone had thrown cold water down my spine, everything clicked. So if they found it, and I know they did, they'll think I don't remember where it was. The 4th morning in the hospital felt colder than the rest. Maybe it was the way the sun filtered through the blinds like judgment. I hadn't slept much. My eyes had been fixed on the ceiling, counting the slow-moving shadows as nurses walked past my door. That damn USB, the yellow envelope. I'd taped it behind the dresser drawer years ago, certain no one would ever touch it, certain no one would care enough to look. And now, I was certain they had. My brain started connecting the timeline. They had moved my room. Vera had casually said it was to open space for storage. But it was more than that. Every time I tried to remember a moment I belonged, it came back hollow or twisted. They weren't just neglecting me, they were clearing me out. I remembered a field trip in middle school, a science museum upstate. It cost $62, not a fortune, but more than I had. I asked Vera if we could afford it. Her face twisted like I'd asked for a car. "You're not dying," she scoffed. "Girls are supposed to be stronger than this. Deal with it." That night, I tucked the permission slip under my pillow, then quietly ripped it in half. I watched the yellow paper flutter into the trash next morning while Trent walked out the door in his new sneakers, chattering about some band trip he didn't even want to go on. 2 years later, I asked to join the after-school STEM competition. My chemistry teacher had pulled me aside, said I had a knack for systems, his words, not mine. Vera barely looked up from her phone. Those things are for boys who can afford to waste time. Mom, I tried. Do you want to get married or not? Who's going to date a girl who's too busy soldering wires? Trent, meanwhile, got a guitar, art supplies, and a monthly gym membership. Because boys need hobbies to stay out of trouble. Apparently, girls needed to stay small, unnoticed, useful. Back in my hospital bed, I sat up, grabbed my phone, and stared at the call log. I hadn't spoken to Vera since the ambulance. I didn't want to, but this wasn't about wanting anymore. The line rang 3 times. Vera answered like nothing happened. Hi, sweetie. Glad you're feeling better. I stared out the window. Did you move my dresser? There was a pause. That old thing? We put it in the garage. We needed the room. I thought you'd be gone for a while. Gone. Not healing. Not recovering. Gone. I let the silence stretch before I spoke again. Don't touch my things again. She laughed, the fake kind she used when someone at church commented on her perfume. Lorene, is something wrong? If you find a USB, I said, voice flat. Don't erase anything. Another pause. Are you accusing us of something, Lorene? Not yet, I replied. But you should be worried that I'm keeping track now. There was a long inhale on her end, the kind of breath you take before letting loose, except she didn't. She just hung up. No goodbye, no apology, just a click. I dropped the phone into my lap and let my head fall back against the pillow. The ceiling tiles hadn't moved, but I saw everything differently now. People don't fall apart all at once. They're chipped at, day by day, with small slights and quiet exclusions. You don't even notice how hollow you've become until someone finally listens, and you hear how loud the silence used to be. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire. Your mom just called me. She sounded off. I stared at it, then typed one line back. They're not used to me talking back. But I wasn't just talking anymore, I was preparing. The room felt dimmer than usual, like the walls had soaked up the fatigue I couldn't shake. It was late afternoon, the kind of hour where time felt stuck. Too late for lunch, too early for dinner, but just right for people to forget you still existed. Then the door creaked open. Claire didn't knock. She didn't smile either. She walked in like she was bracing for a storm and dropped a duffel bag onto the foot of my bed. You told me once to hang on to this, she said, unzipping it, in case you ever gave up. She pulled out the scarf first, the burgundy one, soft, folded perfectly, like it hadn't been touched since I last held it. Then came a thick folder, bulging with receipts, printouts, and tabs in neon pink and yellow. I didn't say anything at first, I just stared at the scarf. Claire sat down beside me, her voice low. You wanted to believe it was a bank error, but it never was. I opened the folder. My name was everywhere, on letters, on forms, on statements I never remembered signing. A secondary debit card opened under my student profile, charges from Amazon, Uber, Best Buy. A drone, Bluetooth speakers, a car rental for spring break. All logged under my name, all billed to the scholarship stipend I had earned on my own. I clenched the folder in my hands. My pulse thudded hard behind my ears. I confronted the credit union, Claire said. They said the Guardian account had requested a card be mailed to your home address. My jaw tightened. Vera. She didn't even bother hiding it, Claire muttered. She used your name because yours had better credit. The realization didn't shock me. It solidified something I'd tried to dismiss for years. I had always been a resource, not a daughter. And it wasn't just money. I remembered the essay. Sophomore year, I had applied for a grant aimed at students with medical hardship. I poured myself into the application, talked about the costs of insulin, the ER visits, how I rationed my meds some months. It was the first time I allowed myself to be vulnerable on paper. Vera read the essay once, shook her head. "You sound pitiful," she said. "Take that part out." She deleted the paragraph about medical debt, replaced it with, "I come from a solid middle-class family that values resilience and hard work." "Make us look respectable," she'd added. Respectable. That word always tasted like bleach. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. Claire saw it in my face. She handed me my phone. "You gonna call her?" I nodded. The dial tone rang once, twice. Vera picked up on the third ring. "Hi, honey. Feeling any better?" "You used my health to buy speakers," I said, voice cold. "For a boy who can't even spell FAFSA." Her tone shifted. "That's not fair. We all sacrifice in different ways." I nearly laughed. "No, you steal in different ways. Laureen, I'm not finished." Before she could argue, Trent's voice came through in the background. "Is she on the phone again? Tell her to stop acting like she's special." He grabbed the line. "You've always been so dramatic," he sneered. I inhaled slowly. "Drama is screaming," I replied. "This is documentation." I hung up. Claire didn't say a word. She just picked up the scarf and draped it across my shoulders like she was crowning me. "When you grow up being minimized," I said quietly, "your voice becomes a scalpel. Quiet, but surgical." The scarf smelled faintly like cedar. I remembered saving up for weeks to buy it. Vera wore it once, never acknowledged where it came from. Of course she didn't. I grabbed my laptop from the tray beside the bed. My fingers moved faster than I expected, controlled, purposeful. I opened the state fraud reporting portal and started filling in every field. Name, date, institution, evidence. I attached the files, uploaded the receipts, added my ID. I wasn't sending a warning anymore. I was sending consequences. Just as I hit submit, my phone buzzed again. New email. Subject, security alert, unauthorized attempt to access your student aid account. I didn't even blink. I just smirked. Now they're scrambling. By early evening, the air in my room felt thick with unspoken things. I hadn't turned on the television or asked for visitors. I didn't need noise. I needed clarity, the kind you only find when you're quiet long enough to let truth crawl up from under all the excuses. I spread Claire's folder out across my lap, every receipt, screenshot, and printout in perfect rows. Her handwriting in the margins was brisk, efficient. There was no room left for maybes. "You don't have to scream to be heard," I whispered to myself. "You just need records." One report stood out, an EMT form she'd acquired through a patient advocacy request. I'd forgotten she mentioned it, but there it was in black ink. Initial attempt to enter residence was denied by maternal guardian. Guardian stated patient was just low energy. Low energy. I was in a diabetic coma. The EMT note ended cold. Had we arrived 30 minutes later, the outcome may have been fatal. My stomach twisted. Not because I was shocked, but because they didn't even hesitate to lie to the people trying to save me. I sent a photo of the report to Marvin, no message attached. He'd know exactly what it meant. Moments later, he called. "I watched them," he said. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. "On the kitchen cam, the backup system still uploads to my account," Marvin continued. "They walked right past you, stepped over you." My breath stopped. "You saw?" He didn't even flinch, Laureen, not once. I didn't ask who he meant. We both knew. Trent. I closed my eyes, forcing the bile back down. "Thank you," I said softly. "For what?" he asked. "For watching," I answered. "For not pretending it didn't happen." After we hung up, I attached the EMT report to an email, added a draft affidavit, labeled everything by date. I wasn't compiling trauma, I was building a case. "No one protected me," I whispered, voice steady now. "So now, I'll protect the record." A new email popped up on my screen. Security alert. Unauthorized attempt to access your FAFSA account. I clicked through. Secondary user, removed. Parental control override, disabled. They were trying to delete proof, but I was already one step ahead. I opened a new spreadsheet and began logging every failed login attempt with timestamps, IP addresses, and screen captures, digital fingerprints, evidence they couldn't erase. A knock came at the door. Claire slipped in, holding a cup of vending machine coffee. She looked like she hadn't slept in 2 nights. "I have a friend," she said, sitting next to me. "He works in the district office, knows how to keep things quiet until they're loud." I raised an eyebrow. "You offering me revenge?" Claire shrugged. "I'm offering you traction." "I don't want revenge," I said. "I want accountability." She smiled. "Sometimes they're the same thing." Before she left, she kissed my forehead gently, like someone making a silent promise. I watched her go, then turned back to the screen. I drafted one more email. To Dr. Dorian. Subject: Personal documentation request. Time sensitive. "Hi, Dr. Dorian, I'm formally requesting a full copy of my medical records under HIPAA protections. Please include all access logs, notes, and documents from my admission onward. If any record was accessed prior to my consent, I'd like that flagged." I signed and hit send. "They're going to say I'm being dramatic," I muttered. "They always do." This time, I'd let the documents speak louder than any apology they never meant. Just before I turned off the screen, another email landed. Subject: Records attached. Prior family account access logged. "We're investigating." I stared at the screen, no longer shocked. They've been covering tracks before I even woke up. Morning sunlight cut across my hospital blanket, sharp and too honest. I hadn't slept much, but I was wide awake. My laptop sat open across my lap, a spreadsheet glowing on the screen. Timestamps, login alerts, flagged access logs. Every detail stacked in a neat little column, like bricks in a wall I was building around what was left of my dignity. The patterns were obvious now. The first unauthorized login came less than 4 hours after the ambulance took me. They didn't cry. They didn't panic. They got to work deleting, like I'd already been written out of the story. They weren't grieving, I whispered to myself. They were erasing. A knock came. Claire didn't wait for me to answer. She stepped in, holding a USB drive and a paper bag. "You need to hear this." I muted the TV, one of those morning shows with too much fake laughter, and took the drive. "Is it bad?" "Let's just say they weren't exactly whispering." She plugged it in. The audio started low, clinking dishes, someone walking. Then Vera's voice, clear as glass. "She's just a liability now." Trent: "We're not seriously going to keep her on the plan, are we?" Another voice, male, unfamiliar. "If you move that money into your name now, it'll look suspicious. Wait a month." Vera again: "I'm done waiting. That fund could cover Trent's entire project. She's not even working." I didn't move. My spine stayed rigid. But inside, every muscle screamed. They had a meeting. Without me. About me. "She's always been high maintenance," Trent added, laughing. I clicked pause. The silence afterward was heavier than the recording itself. "Claire," I asked slowly, "can you email this to Marvin too?" She nodded. "Already did." I turned back to my laptop, logging into the old state health portal. At 19, I'd tried to apply for Medicaid. Got denied. I assumed it was income-related or some technical glitch I didn't understand. But now I knew better. I pulled up the archived file. Application, flagged incomplete. Reason, conflicting income data provided by parental guardian. There it was, Vera's signature, a full 5 digits higher than what she'd ever earned in a year. She had tanked the application on purpose, kept me tethered, kept control. I leaned back, the heat rising behind my eyes. "They called it tough love," I muttered, but it was theft under a moral disguise. I thought of a quote I'd read years ago, one I never appreciated until now. Brené Brown said, "When we deny the story, it defines us. When we own the story, we can write a brave new ending." And I was ready to write mine. The phone buzzed. Marvin. "I think they're moving your things," he said. I sat up straighter. "What?" "The garage door's open. I was on my way to drop off something. Saw your dresser. And bags." "They're clearing me out," I said quietly. "They think you won't fight back," he replied. They're wrong. After the call, I uploaded every file I had to a secure folder. Then I opened the legal clinic website Claire had bookmarked. It was local, but well-reviewed, discreet. I filled out the intake form, uploaded the audio, added the EMT report, tagged the financial logs with a note, evidence of tampering and neglect, urgent review requested. 20 minutes later, I got a reply. Subject, received. Case may fall under multi-statute violations. We'll contact you shortly. They were listening now, not just to me, to proof. I sat back, breathing in for the first time without panic tightening my lungs. Maybe it was relief, or maybe it was just the beginning of war. They saw me as too weak to win, I said aloud, but just resilient enough not to die. That's where they miscalculated. A new voicemail appeared. Vera's voice, shaky this time, not rehearsed. We need to talk. This is going too far. I stared at the screen. Too far for who? They walked into the room like they owned the place. Marvin had reserved the small conference hall at the community center. Quiet, neutral ground, no one's house, no home court advantage, just 4 walls, a long table, folding chairs, and fluorescent lights that made everyone look a little more guilty than usual. I arrived 10 minutes early. Claire helped me carry in the files. She didn't say much, just handed me a bottle of water and nodded toward the front seat. Marvin had already set up the small speaker and folder tabs. The old man's attention to detail was surgical. Vera came in next, all dressed up like she was heading to a church fundraiser. A scarf that wasn't hers around her neck, perfume too strong, lips drawn tight. She smiled like a politician during a scandal. Trent followed behind her, phone in hand, smirking. I hope this isn't going to be a circus, he muttered as he sat. Oh, you'll be center stage, I said. Don't worry. They didn't notice the audio recorder on the corner of the table. I think we should start, Marvin said, his voice calm but ironclad. Laureen has something she'd like to share. I nodded. Before we go any further, I said slowly, reaching into the folder beside me, I want you to hear something. I hit play. The audio file filled the room. Vera's voice was unmistakable, calculated, clipped. She's just a liability now. That fund could pay for Trent's project. Trent's voice followed, laughing. She won't even know. She doesn't read any of that stuff. Another voice, Michael, a family friend. Just make sure no one audits that account. You move it now, they'll trace it. Silence followed. Trent looked up first. Where the hell did you get that? Don't worry, I said. It's admissible. Vera's hands shook slightly. She gripped the table. Laureen, you're twisting. I raised a hand. There's more. Marvin stood next. This is the draft of Ruth's will, he said, lifting a sealed envelope and laying it in front of them. The original one, the one I sent to your email, Vera. Compare it to what you submitted to probate court. She didn't move. I highlighted the missing sections, Marvin added, including the line where Ruth left part of her estate to Laureen. Trent scoffed. It was a miscommunication. No, I said, standing slowly. It was erasure. Vera's face turned red. We did what we had to do. Trent had real needs. We couldn't afford to split everything. You made decisions for everyone, I said, without consent, without honesty. Trent leaned back, arms crossed. So what? You never went without. I almost died, I snapped. That's not the same as going without. 2 seats down, a woman shifted. Marvin had invited 2 of Grandma Ruth's closest friends, retired teachers, both widows, both lifelong members of the same church Vera only showed up to on holidays. Beside them sat Pastor Willis, who had officiated Ruth's funeral and hadn't spoken to Vera since. Their stares said everything. Vera's voice rose. This is a family matter. Then why, I said, voice calm, did you take it to the bank? She stopped. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder stamped Toledo Legal Aid. I've filed. Depositions begin next week. The room went silent. Trent cursed under his breath. Vera looked at Marvin, then at me, then back to the folder like it might catch fire. I didn't gloat. I didn't scream. I just let the silence sit. It was louder than anything they could say. Because it wasn't revenge, it was release. I didn't want them punished. I wanted them out of my bloodstream. The meeting ended without hugs, without apologies, without resolution. Just truth, laid bare. As I was packing my bag, a woman approached me. She looked official, business card in hand, quiet demeanor. "I'm with the DA's office," she said softly. "If you're serious about pressing this, I can help." I didn't flinch. "I'm done being quiet," I said. Sunday morning didn't greet me with light. It brought vibration, my phone buzzing again and again. When I finally picked it up, the notifications looked like confetti. Missed calls, texts, emails, some angry, some quiet, a few with nothing but, "I didn't know." Marvin's name lit up next. I answered immediately. "Your uncle called," he said. "Said he's ashamed to have ever believed them." I sat still for a moment. That's a start. What I didn't expect came minutes later, a link sent by a username I didn't recognize. I tapped it out of curiosity, and there it was, on a local neighborhood forum. A screenshot of a receipt, $147.29. Boutique Pet Spa. The timestamp? Same afternoon my insulin order was canceled. The caption read, "This is how they prioritized." Beneath it, hundreds of comments were piling up. "She almost died and they were styling a Pomeranian?" "This is straight out of a Lifetime movie, but worse, it's real." They didn't just fail her. They invested in her silence. I didn't post anything. I didn't have to. By noon, Marvin texted again. "Check your email. Sent you photos." I opened the first image and my breath caught. My childhood room. Or what used to be. Now it was lined with LED strips, ring lights, a camera on a tripod. My bookshelf had been emptied, replaced with shelves of skincare products and motivational wall art. In the corner, Trent stood in frame, mid-sentence, mid-smirk. The caption from his video read, "Perseverance isn't about comfort, it's about choice." He was streaming from the same room where I had collapsed. The fury didn't hit me all at once. It arrived in waves, quiet, hot, steady. I clicked the comments. Someone had recognized the room from a hospital fundraiser I'd organized years ago. Another remembered Vera bragging that Trent converted that dead space into a creative sanctuary. A small news blog shared a story titled, "Family Disowns Daughter for TikTok Clout." The image was one of me as a child, arm around Ruth, both of us smiling, and a more recent shot of Trent in full influencer mode. I read every line, and then I closed the laptop. I didn't need to add my voice to the noise. They were facing what I had never been able to say aloud. A text from Claire arrived. "You don't have to say anything. You already did." Later that afternoon, Marvin stopped by the hospital. He didn't say much, just pulled a chair beside me and handed me something soft, folded neatly, almost reverently. The scarf, still untouched, still mine. "They built a spotlight for him," Marvin said. "You built a legacy." I held it in my lap for a long time before speaking. It never felt like one. He just nodded. "That's how you know it is." By early evening, a reply from legal aid landed in my inbox. "We're moving forward. There's enough for at least 3 counts." My finger hovered over the reply button, then typed back 3 words. "Time for consequences." Just as I was about to close my laptop, another email arrived. This one was different. Subject: Invitation to speak. Medical Neglect Advocacy Panel. Would you be willing to speak on behalf of individuals affected by family-based medical negligence? Your story has resonated deeply. I read it twice. "They want to hear me speak," I whispered, and this time, they won't look away. The hum of my fridge was the only sound in the apartment that morning. No footsteps overhead, no doors slamming, just me and a small place that smelled like fresh paint and possibility. My name was finally on a lease. Not as an emergency contact, not as a co-signer, but as the sole tenant. I brewed a cup of coffee and stood by the window, sipping slowly while checking my phone. Notifications were still rolling in, news alerts, messages from strangers, support from people I never met. But for the first time, I didn't feel overwhelmed. Just aware. I used to dream of escaping. Now I was building. My inbox dinged. Legal aid had forwarded a final batch of bank records. I opened the file, scrolling through the familiar account numbers, then stopped when I saw the charge, $5,000. Online course enrollment. Trent's name. Same week my insulin was canceled. I leaned against the counter, staring at the screen. My survival bought his certificates. Later that afternoon, while organizing paperwork for court, I saw something else. A post from Vera's Facebook, Thanksgiving 3 years ago. A family photo. I was there. I remembered the outfit, the conversation, the awkward attempt at togetherness. But in the photo, I was gone. Cropped. Caption: Blessed to have all my children close. That was the moment I knew. I was never going back. The comments underneath were brutal this time. Why is she always missing from their pictures? This story hurts because it's so real. Some came from other women, mostly older, who had lived their own invisible versions of mine. One read, "My daughter went through this too. Thank you for not staying silent." By evening, I received an official court email. Case accepted. Charges filed. Will tampering. Medical neglect. Insurance fraud. I forwarded the message to Marvin. He replied within minutes. Subject: Proud of you, Lore. The sun had set by then. I needed to breathe. I walked to a park a few blocks away, where I used to journal as a teenager. The same bench was still there. Weather-worn, but standing. I sat and pulled out my old notebook. Flipping through pages, I stopped at an entry I had written after one of Vera's more polite betrayals. They say I'm selfish for wanting more, but I think wanting to live fully isn't selfish. It's survival. I read it out loud, then whispered, "Silence was never safety. It was consent." Oprah once said, "You get in life what you have the courage to ask for." So I asked. When I got home, I sat at my kitchen table and replied to the advocacy group from the week before. Subject: Medical neglect panel. Confirmed. Yes, I'll speak. Count me in. Attached is a brief bio and documentation summary. I hit send. There was no fear, just fire. I opened a blank document, started drafting my speech. Halfway through the first paragraph, another email arrived. Subject: Defamation threat. Cease desist. Due to legal complications, your family has retained counsel and issued a formal statement. Continued public commentary may result in civil action. I read it twice, then smiled, because this time I had a lawyer too. The letter from the lawyer went out first thing that morning, a simple, unemotional response to their cease and desist. All statements made by my client are supported by verifiable documentation. No retraction will be issued. I sat across from my attorney in the quiet of his office, the light from his desk lamp reflecting off the edge of the polished table. He glanced up over his glasses and said, "They're not building a case. They're trying to save face. There's a difference." It didn't feel like victory, just clarity. I left the office and walked the few blocks home to my apartment, letting the cold air bite gently at my cheeks. The same air that once felt heavy now felt clean, sharp, like truth. Back in my apartment, I stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by things I had chosen: a blue lamp, a framed print of Ruth's handwriting, my couch, my peace. I didn't want an apology anymore. I wanted peace in knowing I didn't need one. That evening, Marvin and I sat on the couch in silence, a mug of tea in his hand, my legs curled beneath me. He handed me a note, old but preserved. It was written in Ruth's handwriting, "To my granddaughter who sees everything, even when no one looks at her." I finally cried, not for what I lost, but because someone, once, saw me clearly. "You know," I said softly, wiping a tear from my chin, "Vera once told Aunt Mel I was too emotional to care for you." Marvin turned his eyes to me slowly. "She said that?" I nodded. "I heard it. I was 15. You were sick. I offered to stay home with you." He took a deep breath. "Do you regret it?" "Not for a second." He set the mug down. "I regret thinking they were still worth trusting." 2 days later, I stood in front of the final box, full of things Vera had sent over. Old medals from elementary school, journals, a drawing I made in 3rd grade that Ruth once hung on her fridge. I didn't want any of it. I carried the box to the community center's donation pile and walked away. I didn't need physical evidence of the years I wasn't loved, I whispered to myself. Later that afternoon, a message popped up in my inbox from Trent. Subject: It didn't have to be this way. I stared at it for a moment. Then I composed a reply. I deleted it. Instead, I sent back a blank message with only one subject line. It did, and it was always going to be. That night, as I finalized the slides for my speech at the advocacy panel, I felt something I hadn't in years: agency. Not just over my past, but my voice. My speech was titled, Silenced by Blood, Rescued by Proof. I practiced the final line in the mirror until it landed just right. Sometimes survival isn't enough. You deserve to thrive. Just as I saved the final draft, Claire walked in, holding a manila envelope. You said you didn't want it, she said, her tone quiet but purposeful. But I think you should read this. She handed it to me. No return address. Just my name, Vera's handwriting. I didn't want to open it, but sometimes healing means reading what won't heal you. The letter smelled faintly of citrus, Vera's old perfume. The handwriting was hers too, tight and controlled, like always. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't remorse. It was defense in cursive. You never understood how hard it was to raise a child like you, she wrote. I folded the letter twice, lit a match, and dropped it into the ceramic dish by the window. The flames curled the paper slowly before it collapsed into ash. No smoke alarm sounded. No one knocked to check on me. It was fitting. At the courthouse, I wore the same scarf Marvin had given me, the same scarf I once bought for Vera. It had changed hands so many times it felt neutral now, like the final thread of a past I was ready to cut clean. When it was my turn to present, I stood without hesitation. I handed the clerk a small black USB drive, labeled in silver Sharpie, Ruth. Inside were Ruth's original will, the altered financial statements, and the kitchen camera footage Marvin had preserved. It showed Trent stepping over me, Vera offering no help. It wasn't dramatic. It was damning. The judge took her time. She reviewed everything silently, glasses pushed low on her nose. Then she looked up at the room. This case was never about money, she said. It was about value, and who was denied it. Vera's sentence was suspended, on paper at least, but she was ordered to pay restitution in full, including hospital costs and legal fees. Trent was fined, barred from managing anyone's finances in any state. The court gave them a choice: issue a public apology or lose any leeway in repayment terms. They issued the apology. Stiff, rehearsed, read off a sheet. I didn't watch it live. Instead, I posted one photo, me outside the courthouse, scarf wrapped around my neck. Caption: They took what they could, but not who I am. The next day, I stood behind a podium at the medical advocacy event. The crowd was small, but focused. Real. I titled my speech, Proof Over Permission. I opened with a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. I didn't tremble once. I used to beg for a seat at their table, I said. Now I'm building my own. Applause was gentle but lasting. Afterward, a woman approached me with tears in her eyes. My daughter's struggling with insulin access too. Her father thinks it's not urgent unless she faints. I handed her a card for the foundation I'd just registered. Tell her this, I said. Your life is not optional. That evening, as I was packing up my notes, one last message arrived in my inbox. From Trent. Subject: You happy now? I stared at it, then typed back. No, but I'm free. I blocked him. For good. The next morning, I visited Marvin's grave. The wind was calm. I stood in silence, the scarf still warm around my neck. You saw me first, I whispered, and now, so do they. On the way home, my phone buzzed again. An email. A subject: investigative inquiry, broader neglect case. Your story started a wave, the reporter wrote. Would you be willing to help us investigate a broader case of medical neglect? I stopped walking, smiled. Let's begin.